So noswaith dda bawb, good evening everyone. Fenw yw Elin ac rwy'n un o'r swyddogion datblygu ar gyfer tîm cyswllt ffermio. My name's Elin and I'm one of the Farming Connect Development Officers. Yn gyntaf, hoffwn eich croesawu chi gyd i'r webinar yma heno, Ffermio Defaid Godro, Dull Newydd yng Nghymru. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's webinar, Dairy Sheep Farming, a New Approach. Tonight, we will be looking at the feasibility of establishing a dairy industry in Wales. This was a recent project carried out by James Holloway on behalf of Mentor Busnes, and I'll be passing the reins to James shortly, in which he will introduce our panel of speakers for tonight. And I know that we've got a lot to go through tonight, so I'll try and keep my intro as short as possible. Just before we hand over to James, just to note that this meeting is being recorded tonight. If you've joined us previously over Zoom, you'll be well aware of how it works. But however, if you would like to ask any questions throughout the presentation, you can do so by clicking on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, and we'll come to them at the end of the presentation. As your host this evening, Farming Connect also have a large range of services available that might be of interest to you at this current time. Our advisory service enables you to have bespoke advice ranging from business planning, feasibility studies, to more technical advice such as soils and grassland and nutrition. We also have a number of one-to-one surgeries available which are fully funded. Some topics that might be of interest after tonight, such as business, marketing and diversification, milking parlour design, grassland management, sheep nutrition and animal health. I'd also like to take this opportunity to promote our Farming Connect mentors. We have some mentors already specialising in the dairy sheep sector, so this is another opportunity for you to get some advice from them too. If you'd like to make the most of any of these services, contact your local development officer or the Farming Connect Service Centre to find out more. Can I also encourage you all to fill in the webinar feedback form at the end of the webinar? You can also mention any inquiries or services that you wish to benefit from here as well. Now, that's enough talking from me. I'd now like to hand over to the Dairy Sheep Wales project leader, James Holloway.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining the webinar this evening. Hopefully you'll go away from tonight's meeting with a greater understanding of sheep milk production, what are the products, where are the markets, and could it work for Wales? So we've got a bit of a change in our running order this evening. We've got some technical problems from our speaker in New Zealand, which we hope to overcome, but we will rearrange the agenda to see can we accommodate that. So we'll close the meeting this evening with some questions and a poll to gauge your interest in dairy sheep. Before that, we'll talk about the project, and we'll also hear from farmers in Wales who are milking sheep, as well as our speaker from New Zealand, Ian MacDonald. So we were going to begin with Ian, but in a change the running order, we will begin with Geraint, who will host, my colleague on the project, Geraint Hughes, who will host the conversation with our panel of Welsh farmers currently milking sheep. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Geraint.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you, James. And croeso, a mae'n neis gweld gymaint o'ch chi'n ymuno heno. It's great to see so many joining us tonight on the webinar. So as James said, there's been a slight change. So we're going to start closer at home with a short conversation with farmers who are actually milking sheep in Wales, ffermwyr sydd yn godro defaid rwan yng Nghymru. I'm just going to kindly ask if the screen could be unshared so that we can use the whole screen. So whoever's sharing the screen might want to unshare so that we're back up running so we can see the farmers. And joining me for this 10 to 15 minute session, I'm very lucky to have Hugh Jones, Alan Jones and Eric Evans joining me as the pioneering farmers who are actually now milking sheep in Wales. So the aim of this session is to have an insight to what they are doing and also to share some of their experiences up to now. And with over 60 of you already listening and up to nearly 70, there's obvious a big interest in this sector. And I do think it will play more of a role in Welsh farming as time progresses. Now, I've been very lucky to be spending time in the shadows of people like Alan, Hugh and Eric, and I've been exposed to what's going on in the young Welsh dairy sheep sector. And Farming Connect has been assisting in various ways. Both Alan and Hugh have been in the Acriscope group, are in an Acriscope group. Eric as well is in an Acriscope group. And Acriscope brings people together to learn about a certain topic. And I can tell you tonight, if there is follow-on interest from you as potential dairy sheep farmers, then you're more than welcome to email me, and I'll give my email on the chat so you can get in touch if you want to be part of a group. Farming Connect is also running an EIP project looking at the link between bacteria and milk quality, and you can have more details on the EIP Wales page on the Farming Connect website. Alan is a mentor specializing in dairy sheep, and that service is available, and Alan is very kind with his experience, both the good and the bad things he has learned over the years. He's very willing to share the ups and downs. Hugh has been on a management exchange program, as has Eric as well, and Hugh in particular looked at dairy sheep whilst he was traveling under that program. And also I know this work went on to develop the technical capacity of dairy sheep in Farming Connect. So lots going on, and it's starting from a very small base. So I'll be quiet now because we want to hear from Alan, Hugh and Eric. So Alan, gynta, croeso chi yma i'r sesiwn heno yma. Fysa chi cystal ac egluro, would you be kindly enough to explain where do you farm, when did you start?
Okay. Dwi'n ffarmio yn Chwilog just ar gyrion y Llyn Peninsula, right on the edge of the Llyn Peninsula in North Wales. This is my 5th season milking sheep. I started off Kerry Rhymes from Cosyn Cymru, was on the Welsh programme Heno, saying I was going to get some milk to Preston. And I thought that was very stupid with all the sheep in Wales. So I contacted her and things progressed from there really. But I had been looking for something extra to raise more money for the business a few years before that. Yeah.
Great, so you've sort of explained briefly why you started there. You saw an opportunity obviously, and you've got a market there with working closely with the cheese producer. So I guess my question before we move on to Hugh is if you could just briefly describe your system and how it has evolved over the years and how the Llyn breed fits into that system.
Okay, it's all an organic system, and I milk about 200 Llyn ewes. To begin with, I bought 20 Friesland ewes down in Dorset, brought them up here, but they didn't like the Welsh climate at all. They wanted to huddle up by the walls if it was raining, wanted to go in the shed, and were not eating grass, so making any money. So I had a few Llyns myself, so I increased them, and they coped all right with the weather and everything else, and milked quite well. And eventually I've changed. Now they rear the lambs for about 6 weeks, and then I milked them on for the rest of the summer. I started lambing beginning of February, and I dried off last year, just beginning of November. That's just the outside of it.
Great, and it's probably a safe bet to say you're the only milker of the Llyn breed, or in the UK, maybe the world.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think yes.
Great.
Pretty safe bet.
Yeah. Great. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Alan. And I can see Ian has joined us from New Zealand, so he will be here to share his experience in a few minutes' time. Moving from one pioneer to another, Hugh, could you briefly tell us where you farm and when did you start?
Yeah, good evening. So I'm Hugh, and I'm from Anglesey, and I started milking sheep last year, milking 50 ewes, 50 Lacan crossed with Friesian.
And what market do you supply, and how do you start? How did you start off your enterprise?
Yeah, similar to Alan, I supply a local cheesemaker, Kerry Rhymes, Cosyn Cymru, and this year I'm hoping to develop my own product, making milkshakes out of ewe's milk.
Champion, great. And that's under the brand Llaeth Medra, which can be found on Facebook as well, isn't it? Yep. Llaeth Medra. And lastly, Hugh, what have been the biggest challenges or barriers you faced, and how did you overcome them?
COVID is probably been the biggest barrier for me this year. Last year, trying to develop my own product. That's the Food Technology Centre in Llangefni. It wasn't easy, as the restrictions lifted, the yield in milk were going down, so I wasn't able to carry on doing the trials that I wanted to do.
Yeah, great. Okay. Best good wishes for a new season, which for milking sheep starts about now, doesn't it? Slightly earlier for some, and maybe a bit later. And diolch yn fawr iawn, Hugh. Thank you very much for that. And lastly, we're moving down southwards to Eric Evans. Croeso, Eric. Could you briefly explain where exactly you are and when did you start milking?
Diolch, Geraint. Yeah, my name is Eric and I farm in not far from Fishguard in North Pembrokeshire. And this is my second season now. And yeah, we just started lambing, so it's early days this year.
Just as Alan and Hugh has given us an insight to their market, where does your milk go, Eric?
Well, I was very lucky, really. I bought the flock from somebody who was already processing the milk into cheese. And it's a local market. We're hoping that will grow. But it's been very, it's been a learning curve for me. Although I've been used to milking all my life, dairy cows, but I think it's something that's given me an opportunity to make a good future for my farm.
Great, good. And the last question of this session goes to you, Eric. You know, I'm sure there's farmers joining us, farming families joining us who are looking into this as a possible opportunity. What would be your tips for farmers considering starting in dairy sheep farming?
Well, the number one tip really is you've got to have a market for your milk. There's no point going into this without having an end customer, unless you want to process it yourself. But that takes a lot of experience and a lot of investigations into possible markets. But you have to have a market before you even begin. And also, I think you need to spend time with someone who actually does this already. I was lucky. I spent a bit of time with the owner of the sheep before I actually bought them. So I milked with them before I actually took the plunge and actually bought them. So that is my top tip: is market, customer. You know, you've got to make sure that is safe before you even invest a penny.
And I think I'm pretty sure by saying that, Hugh and Alan would vouch for that tip as well. Right. We had 10 minutes and I think we've taken up the 10 minutes. It's been great and thank you very much for sharing your time. I would like to talk more for the rest of the evening, but I know James will come in now and say that's it. And I can vouch as well that all three of you are very kind with your information and experience. We're also aware of around 4 or 5 other farmers in Wales who are milking or about to start milking this year. So it is very much a growing niche. Felly diolch o galon, Hugh, Alan ag Eric. And I will share my email address on the chat. And the good news is, whilst we've been speaking, the numbers have gone up, so no one's left as far as I'm aware. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Back over to you, James.
Thank you, Geraint, and thank you, Alan, Hugh, and Eric for your comments. All three of those Welsh sheep farmers will be remaining on the call and will join us for the end of the meeting when we have the panels and the Q&A. So you'll have an opportunity to ask them questions at the end of the meeting. So we've heard a little bit about how it's done in Wales, and now we'll have the opportunity to see and learn a little bit about what's happening in New Zealand. So I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker. Ian McDonald's a farmer, businessman and trailblazer for grass-based sheep milk production in the South Island of New Zealand. He is also director of the Sheep Milk Supply Group, which applies milk and local food companies producing cheese, yogurts and powder. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Ian McDonald.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. By the look of it, we're going to start with the presentation around the mobile plant. Is it possible to reverse that order? Sorry about the technical issues this morning. No, don't worry, James. Don't worry, James. We'll start with just rolling the mobile plant system. So I'll tell you when to start that video. Yeah. Oh, can we go back? Can we start here? Okay, that's great. So I'd like to start there. Okay, sorry, a short bio. From a third generation dairy farming family, moved away from the family farm to specialize in animal breeding technology and moved through corporate life to management cadet and senior management. And then started a few of my own businesses. These days, that's just very much a governance role. And we are pretty much here 24/7 milking 300 sheep just on 20 hectares. So just a very small operation, very much a one in New Zealand, very much a one-man unit. So, yeah, first of all, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about our pasture-based system, 24/7 outside, where we raise lambs on the ewes and then put them into a once-a-day milking system. So here, lambing starts. Can I see the rest of the slides on the side? Is that possible? Who's ever handling the slides? Yeah. Okay. No, I just want to see on the side, but that's fine. So lambing starts 7th of September. Milking starts 1st of November. Lambing follows the Canterbury lowland pasture growth from warming soil temperatures. Milking continues to the 31st of March. Mating starts on the 14th of April. Our scanning range for the last 10 years has been 180 to 200%. In the mixed stage ewes, with about a 4 to 8% mortality. Ewes are first mated at 8 months and must rear a lamb year 1 to join our breeding flock. Hoggets can be milked before they cut their teeth, and low producers at peak are sold at lamb meat values. A little bit about our environment here. 600mm rainfall is normal in Canterbury. It's a summer dry area, and that dry period is January, February. We grow 25 to 33% of our farm in whole crop red clover. We use a product called Agricom Relish. It's a low estrogen cultivar to get us through the dry. Our pastures are a mix of 2 ryegrass, red clover and white clover. We graze our ewes on whole crop red clover for 90 minutes after milking, and then we shift to a pasture mix. We use rock salt just to help digestion. The type of sheep we want differ from farms that start milking at 24 to 48 hours after birth. Udder quality is more vital in our system. Udder trait heritability at 22 to 25% is high. In our system, strong centre ligament is number 1, teat placement number 2, milking speed number 3. Every new farm entrant to this industry is focused on high milk volume. Can you go through to the slide that shows the girl with the massive udder? That's the one. Yeah, every new farm entrance to this industry is focused on high milk volume. They can happily take all of our girls that produce 4 litres at peak, as these are invariably our problem ewes. Peak milk production is achieved well before lambs can drink all milk, and this is a key risk area where other issues can occur. Some of those issues are sunburn, teat cuts from milk teeth, off, one side teat sucked, one side dry, and mastitis as a secondary issue effect. We scabby mouth vaccinate all ewes pre-lamb. We've planted lines of native trees to help with shade and shelter, and we don't like thin pink skin. We reduce multiples and down to 2 lambs and rear at 2 weeks to stop teat damage from feeding competition. Very few get through without issues otherwise. Our breeding history and objective follows. In 2007, we mated pure East Friesian flock to a Wasi Dorper ram, and then continued using a 3-way cross system called MAC1 until 2016. In 2016, we visited milking sheep flocks in Israel, Sardinia, France, and UK. We found Upper-Lacone had objectives that best matched ours. They have a system where they require the sheep to stay on the ewe for 30 days before they milk. They were also using a sophisticated breed selection model and AI that we well understood. We have used 5 Lacone rams since 2016 over our MAC1 ewes. We call the cross MAC2. We will never again use Awasi after our visit to Israel. Can you go through to the shot of the Awasi sheep, please? No, that's one of our, yep, okay, just no, go back to the Awasi sheep, keep going. Back to the Awasi sheep, please. That's it, stop there. Okay, we used 2 Dutch EFAI rams over MAC1 ewes in 2019 to make rams suitable to mate to MAC2 ewes. We share once per year, 50 days pre-lamb. We do not need to crutch. We tail and castrate at birth. 30% of our ewes have brown udders, eyes, and genitals. 50% of our ewes shed wool, and all are clean on belly and around the points. All milking sheep need careful foot selection, and adding Dorper to our breed mix has not helped. Our total solids has been 1% higher at every part of the lactation compared to the more East Friesian flocks in our sheep milk supply group. Once a day, our mixed day ewes average 1.6 litres a day, and our hoggets average 0.9 of a litre a day. French once a day research shows 30% loss in milk production at peak, reducing to 15% later lactation when compared to twice daily milking. We don't know, but guess they could be right. we have no intention to change from once a day. New Zealand research on loss of milk production by not milking 24 hours post-lambing has shown to cost $90 a ewe and rearing cost of $60 a lamb. We have no intention to rear lambs other than the multiples. We sell our milk through the Sheep Milk Supply Group. This Acorn company has been in existence for 4 years, and it has the ethos of a co-op. It expects suppliers to share up at a minimal cost recovery level and then share up into a food company co after suitable engagement at the supply company level. In return, the Sheep Milk Supply Company maintains a suitable farm gate milk price, and the food company will return capital growth and hopefully a dividend. The 3 current suppliers are all weaned to milk at 15 kilos minimum once a day. We currently sell our milk to cheesemakers and do not intend competing with them. To tip milk out is mind destroying. We milk only enough ewes to fit the market and have this year delayed weaning for the same reason. New Zealand has 5 million, you can click on to the next slide, please. Yeah, New Zealand has 5 million people, but produce enough food for 50 million people. Sheep milk products are a very new concept to New Zealand consumers. Our local cheese milk market for sheep milk has been fickle. We must export. Thankfully, the Chinese government has encouraged milk product consumption to help health outcomes. Many Asians have cow milk lactose intolerance, but sheep milk lactose intolerance is rare. Asians are culturally aware of health benefits through their food intake, so they are a willing consumer, but we must produce a product that has a suitable shelf life to supply. Whole milk powder is a tried and proven product, and the fact that infant formulas only require 25% whole milk as an ingredient make that product particularly attractive. New Zealand sheep milk industry is a game of 2 halves. The North Island farmers' top half have access to a suitable government-owned spray dryer to help establish their business. Spring Sheep and Maui are 2 North Island sheep milk companies that have had access to this massive leg up and are currently building supplier base to meet market demand. Spring Sheep currently get $2 million per year in government funding, and Maui is Chinese owned and have solid connections to Chinese funding. In the South Island, bottom half, we don't have a suitable dryer and therefore need to be a little bit more innovative. A suitable dryer is all about production costs, and one that produces 15 metric tonne a day is the target. And today that will cost us 55 million. The South Island has many dryers, but they are massive, designed for our large dairy cow industry. Most can be seen from space. Okay, that lets you know a little bit about our system here. So now what I'd like to do is just show you a wee video of our system in action and tell you a little bit about our mobile facility. So we're just going to run a wee video, and I'll just tell you a little bit about it as we go through. So if you can start the video, thank you. So we started this project with an 8-bale plant for proof of concept. We then moved into a 16-bale plant to put through the rigors of the Ministry of Primary Industry 2-year evaluation process. Our latest iteration is a 20-bale store plant. One person can handle 20 cups once the sheep are trained at 3 to 4 weeks. Key to our mobile system is solid standing operating procedures for compliance. The New Zealand Code of Practice we must use for risk management program compliance is called NZCP1. NZCP1 has been designed for dairy cows and does not well fit small ruminants. It was never ever designed for a mobile system. So at first one sees a very steep mountain to climb. One must highlight the areas inside the Code of Practice that do not fit, understand the risk, and then design standard operating procedures that take care of the risk. Dairy cow milking shed effluent and sediment present a major risk to achieving a milk product fit for purpose. New Zealand AgResearch data shows dairy cows produce 80 litres per cow per day of effluent, and sheep milking shed effluent 8 litres ewe per day. Our mobile plant produces 1 litre per ewe per day. Sheep effluent is a risk to achieving a fit for purpose product. Our effluent standing operating procedure is designed to mitigate such risk. For example, a new grass strip is used each milking and not used again for at least 30 days. All effluent and plant wash water is captured and dispersed after milking using a GPS recording cell phone app and Bluetooth activated valve control from the truck cab. Our plant effluent consent is by way of code of compliance as we meet the environmental district plan requirements for farm transport and vehicle effluent. The code of compliance route under our environment plan is a huge cost saving. appropriate and very practical. For practical reasons, we milk in a 6 metre wide raceway. They're the length of the paddock with an opening at each end. These raceways are strategically placed around the farm to provide prevailing wind northwest and southwest shelter from native tree lines. The raceways also allow us to easily capture ewes and guide them onto the plant with 4 Prattley Ally 1.5 metre gates. The backing gate is a trained heading dog. Each raceway has 20mm water line with taps spaced at 30 metres. The water is used for the plate cooler at approximate flow of 5:1, and 100 litres is captured warm from milk heat exchange for hand cleaning and fresh water plant flush at the end of milking. We feed whole grain 200 to 250 grams per ewe per milking. The clean in place standard operating procedure uses standard guidelines, except we have modified the code of practice where it calls for 10 litres a cup to 5 litres a cup, due to 2 cups, not 4 cups, in a very short milk plant line loop. Hot water is provided by a mobile system. We have an insulated 450 litre stainless tank attached to a heating coil inside a firebox, all mounted on an H-frame that can be moved with a tractor front and loader. We drive up to the hot water cylinder after milking. The bulk milk vats double as a transport tanker built on a 9 metric ton gross maximum weight Mitsubishi Canter 4-wheel drive truck. The milk tanks are imported, used from Munich. They are superbly engineered Norwegian builds. We chill our milk to 3.5C. This is 2.5C below the code of practice, but that allows us to extend farm storage period from 72 to 96 hours. This allows a logical delivery twice per 7-day period. We deliver milk on Monday and Thursday. The entire plant is 3-phase, 400 volt, 50 hertz, and powered by a 22 kVA generator. Cost, we burn 4 to 5 litres of diesel per milking. The truck is parked in the shed between milkings where the milk vats are plugged into 3-phase mains power. The 20-store plant throughput at peak is 200 sheep per hour. So for 300 ewes plus CIP and effluent dispersal takes us about 2.5 hours. 1,000 ewes once a day inside the 8-hour workday is possible with 3 mobile plant movements to 3 mobs of approximately 330 sheep. Our motivation to design and build a mobile system was twofold. A, an asset that can be sold should we find that business was not profitable. B, a high possibility that the next landowner owner here would not place any value on such a fixed asset. The 20 bale new build cost is New Zealand 150K, second-hand truck 15K, the generator New Zealand 10K, the VATs 7K, total cost of the plant 182K. Canterbury is summer dry area, so ideal for the system. Spring can be wet, so a four-wheel drive is must. Most sheep farmers in New Zealand have covered yards, not here. We use mobile Prattley yards. On wet days, the mobile plant could be driven into the covered yards. We note that even in conventional sheep dairy systems, that wool is still dripping water when the ewes enter the milking platform on a wet day. Interestingly, the sheep udder and teats are well protected from an umbrella effect. In Canterbury, we enjoy milking in the rain. We don't get a lot of it in the summer. There you go. That gives you a bit of an idea of our plant and system in New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was fascinating, and it was so interesting to see the challenges you face in New Zealand, and I'm sure it's got a lot in common with our farmers in Wales. And you're staying with us for the rest of the meeting, and you're available to take questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box, and we'll pick them up at the end of the meeting. And we just take it for granted, don't we? I know we've had a bit of a change in running order, but 12,000 miles away, we take it for granted these days with Zoom that we can cover these miles. So thank you very much, and for overcoming the technology. So with that, we'll move on, and this evening we would like to tell you more about the Dairy Sheep Wales project. This project is a feasibility study commissioned by the Welsh Government. Thank you. So I approached the Welsh Government just under 18 months ago with a proposal that Wales could set up a new dairy sector. The idea began when I came across a company importing infant formula made from goat's milk. And it made me think, why are we importing this? Why can't we do this in Wales? The problem is that goats don't graze, and we have a lot of grass in Wales. So after some more research, I learned how New Zealand has set up a sheep milk powder industry from scratch in less than 5 years. And this inspired me to find out more. Mentor Business has supported me to deliver the project and bring together a team of industry experts. And the study is an in-depth analysis of the sector and its opportunities conducted over a period of 10 months. Joining me today are members from the project team. Geraint, you've already met and heard from, but also David Edwards, who will be helping me on the presentation, and Sophie Cahern, who will be handling the questions, the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. So moving on, please, David. And again, please, I think. So to set the scene, I would like to show you this video clip, which shows you how powder is made from pasture to packet. And hopefully we'll have some sound. Brilliant, thank you very much. So obviously you'll notice that wasn't really Wales, but the question is, why shouldn't it be Wales? And that is a vision of a modern dairy sheep industry producing milk from grass and taking it through to a premium product. So the vision for the project is to establish a sustainable sector for Welsh farmers, one that is market-led. It's important to recognise for premium markets, it's not just what we produce, but also how we produce it. The words clean, green, high welfare, and high quality have to be delivered on. If we get this right, the opportunities to build a sector worth over 140 million, or even 400 million over 10 years. So this is our running order this evening. I will cover the market and take a closer look at New Zealand before looking at what the sector could offer Wales. I will then hand over to David to tell us more about the products and how the sector could grow. And again, thank you. So milk is one of the most valuable agricultural commodities worldwide. The market value for sheep milk is estimated at 23 billion and growing as customers seek alternative products. 20% of the global flock are bred for milk production. That's over 250 million sheep. And almost 50% of these can be found in Asia. So Asia dominates the infant formula market, accounting for over 70%. Sheep powder is a small but growing segment of this market. Year-on-year growth in China is forecast at 16%. And the infant formula retail price is more than 20 times higher than the standard powdered milk price, which makes this market very attractive. And as Ian also mentioned, the Chinese government is also actively encouraging an increase in dairy consumption, as are other Asian countries, as they see it vital to boosting the immune system of their populations. Looking at cheese, the main importers of sheep's cheese are the USA and Germany, which account for over 80% of the imported market. And this market is also forecast to grow at 5% annually. Thank you. So what's special about sheep's milk? Sheep milk is recognized as having higher nutritional levels. If we take cow's milk as the benchmark, it is 80% more calcium, 45% more protein, 44% more energy. It also has higher levels of vitamins and minerals. For example, 50% more vitamin B12. Sheep's milk is known to be very easy to digest. The fat globules are much smaller, making them easier to break down. Sheep milk takes 1 hour to digest, whereas cow's milk takes up to 4 hours. Sheep's milk is also A2 milk, which is the dominant milk supply to the Asian markets. There is a greater intolerance to A1 milk in Asia. This is to do with the type of proteins found in A1 milk. So demand is being driven by a growing interest in health and nutrition and the perception that sheep's milk is very healthy, an intolerance to cow's milk leading to consumers looking for alternatives, and a growth in Asian populations and an increase in their middle classes and their buying power. Thank you. And you can go to the next one. So New Zealand, a market pioneer success story, really. And New Zealand can offer us a really good case study to learn from. They've taken best practice from around the world in order to set up their industry. They conducted extensive research in the market and identified milk powder as an opportunity. They then set about solving the problem of launching the industry from scratch. In comparison to the world's major producers, their flock is still very small, but they have focused their resources on a small number of products to gain critical mass as quickly as possible. The case study will focus on Spring Sheep, which is a partnership between the New Zealand government and private ownership. They're great marketeers and very aware of market trends. They are focused on high animal welfare standards, sustainability, pasture-fed animals, food safety and quality control, and the New Zealand Pure brand. Thank you. So let's take a closer look at Spring Sheep. They've achieved a lot in 4 years. They have a 5-year project where they will invest £15 million. The company is vertically integrated, producing finished products and taking them to market. They utilize third-party processing plants for manufacturing the powder, as mentioned by Ian. Their target market is powder into Asia, as this offers the best returns. In 2016, they began with 3 flocks milking 4,000 ewes. They now have 7 flocks milking over 10,000 ewes. The cost of production is reduced by using grass-based systems and improving their sheep genetics, even developing a new breed, the Zealander. Their milk yields are increasing and they're averaging just over 300 litres per ewe. Currently, lambs are weaned at 48 hours, but trials are underway looking at rearing lambs on their mothers. They are very aware of the value of grass-based production and the image of the sector because they operate in premium markets. Scotty Chapman, the Spring Sheep CEO, is also forecasting New Zealand sheep milk exports to treble to £360 million by 2030. The video at the start was one of their farms. This type of system can offer a blueprint for production in Wales. Thank you. So what could this mean for Wales? Next slide, please. 80% of Wales is designated as a less favoured area, with the predominant farm type being cattle and sheep. Welsh government figures state that in 2019, 73% of these farmers would have made a loss without subsidy. Since its inception, this project sought to answer the question, can we find an alternative, one which offers a sustainable and profitable enterprise for family farms? A new dairy sheep sector designed to meet the requirements of the market could be part of the solution. So what does designed to meet the market mean? High welfare standards, carbon neutral systems, milk from grass, lambs on mums, and the highest standards of quality. All these things add up to provenance, and this can add value to the supply chain. Thank you. So this slide provides 2 examples of sheep milk production systems. The milk focus system is more intensive with higher yields, higher yielding genetics. Ewes are housed for longer and lambs are weaned at 48 hours. They have longer lactations and out of season lambing to spread production. The milk and meat system, or grass-based system, is lower input and produces more milk from grass. Lambs traditionally stay on the ewes for longer. Ewes can be milked once or twice a day and typically have shorter lactation periods. The focus here is to produce milk and meat economically and diversify the farm business. This system offers an opportunity for Welsh farmers to enter the sector. The costings on this slide compares flocks of 300 ewes under different management systems. Taking the average performance figures, the gross margin for a traditional upland flock producing lamb is almost £12,000. The gross margin for a milk-focused flock is £92,000, and the gross margin for a milk and meat flock is £55,000. Adding milk sales increases the gross margin considerably versus producing meat only. The returns from a milk-focused system are 8 times greater than meat only, while the returns for a meat and milk system are 5 times greater than meat only. The costs for setting up a sheep dairy enterprise are modest in comparison to bovine or a poultry enterprise. There is no slurry management required, and most farms will be able to adapt existing buildings. The initial outlay to set up a dairy sheep system can be recovered within a few years, as shown in the table on the right-hand side. And next slide. So the key to success is building milk supply in line with market demand. The plan is to grow steadily over a 10-year period. We forecast milk yields to increase as the genetics improve and farmers adjust to milking sheep. By year 10, we are looking at 100 farms and a national milk flock of 30,000 ewes producing 11 million litres. There is a what if. If there was demand from farmers to join the sector, we could move to powder sooner. These plans could increase threefold, and we could be looking at 300 farms, 90,000 ewes, and 33 million litres. With that in mind, I will now hand you over to David for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, James, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to just take us quickly through the product selection or the ideas that we have for developing a product range. Just by starting off with this picture, some of you will be familiar with these products, some not. But this just gives a bit of an idea of the sorts of things that we could be turning sheep milk into. But before we decide and go down any particular track, I wanted to highlight one of the key issues that we have. And that starts off with seasonality of supply. For those of you who've been involved with dairy cattle farming in the past, you'll remember a time when seasonality meant there was huge differences between the peak and trough of production, with massive amounts of milk in the spring and shortages of milk later in the year when cows dried off. And of course, what that meant was that we needed lots of factories to handle the milk in peak, and then things were quiet at the end of the year. It also meant you were limited in perhaps the sort of products you could make. And the same scenario probably exists if we go down the route of developing sheep's milk, where if we've got a lot of milk available in the traditional season, then we can't make fresh products when the milk isn't available at the end of the season. So some of the things on this chart, like yogurt and fresh milk, whilst they would be desirable to add to a range of things, because of the seasonality of supply, that's going to be quite difficult in the early years as we look to build the supplies going forward. So we've had to think about the seasonality of milk supply and how that does affect the types of products that we would recommend going forward with. On top of that, of course, there is what are the returns. This is a simple graph. It's got different sections on it. So from the left-hand side, sheep's cheese, and it goes right the way through to the right-hand side, sheep's butter. And this graph illustrates what sheep's milk products are realizing in terms of gross profit margin across the main markets, China, USA, Germany, and the UK. So looking at the graph on the left-hand side, you can see there's 4 bars there. That's the sheep's cheese gross margin, average gross margins achieved. China is getting the best gross margin at the moment on cheese, and the UK is second highest at £3.67 per kilo. So that's how the graph works. And then obviously sticking out right in the middle here are both sheep nutritional powder and sheep infant formula, with sheep infant formula in China achieving an average of £25 per kilo gross margin. And that's for a sachet pack product, which is at the real premium end. So, you know, considering supply, considering product margins, our conclusions are that our initial focuses in this project will be to start looking at cheese as the supply builds over a period of time, because cheese can be extended over the periods in the year when milk isn't available fresh, whereas I said the other products are more difficult to extend. And let's not forget that 90% of food is sold through supermarkets, and supermarkets want the same products all year round, like we get now on fresh products, where they're farmed across the globe and shipped into the country to meet the consumer demand. And we've got to recognize that that is one of the challenges that we have. So we've planned to look at cheese as an initial start. We have a plan to work with existing cheese producers, both artisanal and some of the bigger producers, over a period of time as the milk supply grows, and to give support to developing a sheep brand that can be grown with the growth in supply and distribution over a period of time. Now, this slide here, sorry for lots of detail, but what the purpose of this slide really is to show you that over 10 years, if we can grow the supply of milk in accordance with the sort of things James has talked about, then over 10 years, we could get to a value of just under £150 million worth in sheep products. And that adds up between ex-farm gate milk price, the volume of cheese that we would sell, moving up to £50 million worth over 10 years. And then in the graph, if you look in year 6, you can see a little grey bar appearing, because as the volume of milk grows, we would look to move into milk powder in year 6 onwards. Initially, that would have to be working with third parties for contract processing, because the volumes are not sufficient for us to process ourselves. But as that volume grows in years 7, 8, and 9, in line with milk supply, we would look to developing our own brand of sheep's milk powder, and also eventually the vision would be that we can bring that back into Wales and get the full margin realised by not only the farmers, but everybody involved in that supply chain over a period of 10 years. So how are we going to manage all that? Well, we've had some thoughts about a structure of how that might be governed, because obviously we need that to help us move these things forward. There's lots of stakeholders potentially involved in this. So the role of Dairy Sheep Wales really is, as we're starting tonight, is this strategic role of the direction of the industry. We were proposed to establish a DPO, a Dairy Producers Organisation, that will be responsible for the commercial operations, so the engagement with the existing producers and with new ones as we go forward. And then we've got all the genetics side and the support for farmers and the transition from traditional farming into moving in this area. And the research that goes with that, not just in the farming aspects, but also in the product aspects. And we've had some thoughts that this idea of bringing the whole thing together in this way that we've described could also be potentially funded by some form of levy, as other sectors in agriculture are. So to conclude my thoughts, is dairy sheep, the sector, is it feasible for Wales? Is the projects team vision, do we think it's feasible for Wales? And based on our research, we do think it's feasible. It requires the buy-in of everybody in the sector to build that milk supply, to build the markets for the products that we've identified. We do believe it will be more profitable, and we will be looking at added value products. It fits in with the changes in agricultural policy and farming, the challenges that we know that are coming up. It uses existing skills and develops new ones and creates employment. And we do believe overall it contributes to the wealth and the prosperity of Wales's future. So that's our conclusion. I'm conscious that we need some time for questions, but before we do that, we're just going to ask you a quick poll question. So if those of you who have access to a computer now, I'm going to just launch, we've got 2 questions to ask you, and we just like you to select yes or no, and we'll give you 20 seconds to reply. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. And if you please just give us your thoughts on that question. Okay, I'm going to end it there because it's fairly unanimous, and there you go. You can all see that 58 people managed to vote, and there were 58 yeses. So that's very good, and we're glad for your support. I'm going to pass over now to my colleague Sophie, just so that we can pick up on some of the questions that have come in on the chat. So Sophie, can I pass over to you?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Dave. I'm conscious we've only got a few minutes left. Joe, so I suppose the first question that came in from the question was from Phil Christopher. It said, what are the medium to long-term prospects for consumer demand of sheep milk products? I think the presentation partly answered that, but I don't know if, James, you want to pick that up.
Sorry, just run that by me again, Sophie, so I know you're short for time. Just run that again. Sorry,
so what are the medium to long-term prospects for consumer demand for sheep milk's products?
Yeah, I think very good. You know, as the presentation outlined, really, you know, we see a greater diversity in terms of products in the marketplace. So it's certainly broadening as alternative milks come in, and that creates the opportunity for dairy sheep products to enter that market. And we're also seeing this growth in the Asian market, particularly in these premium powders, as we've just explained. So the potential for exports and export powders, I think, is certainly growing.
And there's a second question from Phil, actually, that then asked the question about, you know, who would, if we're going to launch branded products, who would own the brands and how would that work? I don't know if you want to pick that, either James or David.
Happy to come in, Sophie, thank you. I think, you know, we would want to retain as much of the value in the sector as we possibly could. So the plans that we would have is that would be part of the structure that we look to build, and that the value that we're building is recognised in that brand, and that's what it means. It goes all the way back to the culture from the grassroots, and we would want to retain as much of that as possible within Wales. So, you know, it needs all this to work. There's lots of what ifs, and there's a long period before we can get to that highly profitable area. But like any business, that's what you have to do. So our intention would be to find a way of retaining that value within Wales.
Thank you. And then we've got a question specifically for, I think, Alan, actually. It says, sheep scab is pretty large for issue for sheep farmers in Wales at the moment. Is there any protocols you implement as a DIP or anything that you can do when you're milking sheep around that issue?
Just biosecurity, really, double fencing. If you do get it, there's no licensed product which is licensed to use on dairy sheep at the moment. So there is one that's coming out, I think, the beginning of this year sometime. Best thing is not to get it in the first place, which is very difficult. Can't be any more helpful, that's I'm afraid.
Thank you for that. And Geraint, if you were a new dairy sheep farmer in Wales, how would you go about starting out?
That's a good question, Sophie. I think obviously there's a number of people here tonight, and David and James has mentioned the idea of an organisation for the future. So I would definitely keep my ears and eyes open for that. But also highlight, you know, talking with people, especially people who are doing it. You know, I've learned a lot. I'm not a sheep farmer, but I've learned a lot from spending time with Alan and Hugh and Eric. And I know the three of them are willing to share their knowledge. Travel, speak with other people involved in the supply chain. You know, read magazines about consumer trends. I always challenge farmers, you know, on the kitchen table. We should have Farmers Weekly, Farmers Guardian, and the grocer, you know, so that we know where the products go. Learn really what's going on in the markets, because as Eric said, I know Alan and Hugh would say the same, the real turnkey with making this happen is having the market, someone that will buy the milk, or you do it yourself, which is a big challenge. So you use the resources that's available. And we've also offered tonight, Sophie, the opportunity for those interested to become part of a group of people in the same boat. And I know there's about half a dozen have shown interest in that already.
Great, thank you very much for that. I suppose there's one more question here, which I think is quite interesting. It's all about really assistance for farmers. I suppose, James, if I ask you, so what assistance is available for farmers wanting to make the transition to dairy sheep? And, you know, what rough setup cost would it be? That was one of the couple of questions that come in.
In terms of assistance, I think the starting point is what we call the project, really, the DSW, Dairy Sheep Wales. So it's make contact with myself or Geraint in his roles with dairy sheep farmers in North Wales. So make contact with us, really. The plan for the next 12 months really is to begin to get these connections in place between the processor and the producer. And what we'll be looking to do is develop those relationships over the next 12 months with a view to getting the industry up and running as we go into 22.
Yeah, James, I have to cut in there, and we've got one more poll question to do in the last minute, I think, David. So if you could answer this poll question, everybody, if you can, that would be great. And hopefully we might get an answer in the next 30 seconds before it gets cut out, and then we'll have to say goodbye. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ian, from all the way from New Zealand, and all our farmers. Thank you very much.
I'm going to very quickly, Sophie. I haven't been able to get back to everybody. There's loads of questions just come in and queries. If I haven't responded, please email me and I'll try and get back. My typing skills is not quick.
Yeah, any other questions, please email.
So just to share the results with everybody of that second poll. So 20% of the audience would be interested in looking at it in a year. Sorry, 40% of the audience, that's 20. 39% within 3 years, 2% in 5, and 18% none of the above. So thank you so much for that. That's really useful. It's obviously not very scientific, but it gives us some sort of feel for the response. And again, any questions relating to products and markets, we'll make sure those questions are answered and fed back. So thank you.
There's one question that's come in about the rough setup cost, James.
It varies greatly depending on what resources you've got. You know, if you're coming from a dairy farm converting, you know, reasonably low. I mean, Hugh would be a good example. Hugh came from a beef and sheep farm, buying second-hand parlour and units, £10,000 to get the parlour set up, and then it's about making use of the existing flock and grading up so you improve your genetics. But that's very, very rough figures depending on second-hand.
I think in the costings we worked up to roughly on average about 50,000 in total. Was that for everything you're doing? Is that too much?
That would be for an intensive system. If you're looking at an extensive system, it would be yes. But yeah, for an intensive system, Sophie, it would be higher.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to get cut off any second, so I think it's probably right to say thank you very much, everybody. I don't know if James, you want to say anything before we go.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And if you'd like any more information, Geraint's put his details there. I understand this is available to watch. It's recorded, so maybe Ellen or Fionn might just comment on where you can find that. But otherwise, thank you very much, and contact us if you'd like further information.
Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all panellists tonight. It's been a very informative evening, and it's great to hear firsthand from those who are in the sector already, and also, you know, exploring the sector moving forward. As mentioned throughout the presentation, there are a few services available for those of you wanting to hear more about the industry. Geraint's already mentioned, if anybody's interested in taking part in an AgriScope group, do let him know. So either contact himself, or there'll be a link to the feedback form at the end of this presentation, so do comment there as well if you have got any interest. And again, same with the other services. If you have got anything that you would request to do, either contact your local development officer or note it in the feedback form at the end. So that's it from us tonight, and thank you once again for joining, and good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.